You're listening to the new WCEG Network. On WCEG Talk Radio, click Livestream tab. Watch us on Smart TV, Roku, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the WCEG Network. I'm William Bill Edwards, your show host for Wisdom Wednesdays for the next hour. I am pleased and very pleased to have as my guest, special guest, the one and only Reverend Dr. Hodari Williams, Senior Pastor of New Life Presbyterian Church. In this segment, we're going to talk about how we're going to weigh the value of community and church partnerships. Is it beneficial or not? Dr. Williams, Pastor Williams?
Yes, sir.
We're glad to have you. When I decided to do this type of show, I was looking at who in the area of religion and church would be great to talk to. And one thing I was specifically looking for was the person who demands a presence beyond the church walls. And you exemplify to me that type of person. So before we get in our conversation, tell us a little bit about who Reverend Dr. Hodari Williams really is.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Bill, and I want to thank the staff of WCEG Talk Radio and your staff for having me on today. I am a preacher, teacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I believe wholeheartedly in the ministry and mission that Jesus engaged, and it was a ministry that extended well beyond confines of any building, but really was among the people, with the people in mind and heart. So that's at the core of who I am and to who I try to embody in my ministry. I'm originally from Lakewood, New Jersey. I'm a product of the church. I grew up in the church. Grew up in the Baptist church there in New Jersey, the Seacoast Association, and matriculated through school and off to Coastal Carolina University, where I majored in political science with a minor in pre-law. Leaving there, I went and attended ITC, the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, Georgia, where I pursued my master's degree with concentration in biblical studies in Hebrew and Greek. Upon that, I served abroad in Kenya. I had the privilege and honor of working with both Bishop Desmond Tutu and Professor Wangari Maathai, who was at the time the leader of the Greenbelt movement. I worked with her organization that serviced and empowered women who were victims of gender-based violence, and many of those women who had escaped the Rwandan genocide. And returned back to the U.S. to pastor in New Jersey for over 10 years at the Elmwood United Presbyterian Church, and made my way here to Atlanta, where I currently pastor New Life Presbyterian Church, and then pursuing my PhD, Bill, in community psychology with an emphasis in liberation, indigenous, and eco-psychology. So that's a little bit about who I am, and I try to be active and engaged in the work of the community beyond the pulpit.
Let's talk about what you do beyond. That's great. Let's talk about what you do beyond the pulpit, because we were just talking before we got on the air about some things. Talk to us about some of the activities you're engaging in the city that helps to improve the city of South Fulton.
Well, currently, one of the things that I do is I serve on the Economic Development, Downtown Development Authority. We are in the infancy stages of building up that authority that comes out of your administration, and we're still in the infancy stages of developing that entity that will allow us to bring jobs, employment, community infrastructure to the city of South Fulton to enhance the quality of life for its citizens. That is one of our ultimate goals. So that is one capacity in which I work with the city. Outside of that, we are currently exploring, well, actually we'll be installing very soon a charging stations at our location in church that will help us to reduce the environmental footprint that we have on the current environment through use of fossil fuels. We're trying to be a church that leads in terms of recognizing the need for reducing our environmental impact. So we've worked with Georgia Power as well as other green organizations to bring that into fruition. We've been given the green light to make that go ahead. And a lot of that falls under, Bill, our nonprofit, which comes out of New Life Church, but is a separate entity, which is the South Fulton Community Lifeline Incorporated. In addition to that, we feed about over 600 or 700 families a year with our food pantry. We just recently acquired another $10,000 a month from Food Bank in West Food Bank in Peachtree City. They have given us, in addition to an Atlanta Food Bank donation, we have another $10,000 a month in food donations, which we will be able to provide the citizens in our community. We also, outside of this, outside the church walls, work with Secure's House, a domestic violence shelter, where we work with women who have been victims of domestic violence and children. That is a very dear, passionate work of not only myself, but my wife as well. So, those are some of the things, Bill, that we try to do outside of Sunday morning worship and the traditional Bible study on every Wednesday, to really just engage community and let them know that the church is there as a resource for them.
What I really want you also to talk about, I know you're deeply involved with the project now, and that you want to build a building. I know we've been doing for a long time in the process of doing that. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's going to be a great asset to the community, especially even in the Old National area. Tell us about where you are and what the expectations of that building are.
Yeah, so we are embarking upon a bold vision of building a community center. We recognized a long time ago that we kind of sit at a triangle point between both the Old National Corridor, a little bit of Riverdale, and a little bit of Fayette County. But in that particular area where we're at, the community has expressed the desire to have more resources for children, youth, seniors. So the vision of the South Fulton Lifeline Incorporated was to develop a community center that would service the community, where we're not building a fellowship hall. We're building a space that is accessible to the community, that provide educational resources, cultural resources, and other needed space for community development. So that would encompass the building of a gym inside of there. There'll be business incubator space for businesses that are trying to start up and need an address and location or office space. That will be there for them as well. There'll be a senior center for our seniors in the community who need a space for senior activities. We will also have event space there, so that folks on this side, the South side, will have an opportunity to have venues that are appealing, that they can be proud of, and they can take their events to, and have functions and various community-wide events, and not have to go far to the north side for better accommodations. We want to be able to provide that. Also, there'll be tremendous resources for our youth in spaces that we will have there. Through our potential partnership, we have an initial green light with Big Brothers Big Sisters that they are interested in being in that space, sort of as a regional hub, to provide resources for the community of South Fulton in particular. Their interest is the Old National Corridor. So we're really excited about that. That project is currently underway. We are in the fundraising component of it. The architectural drawings or initial renderings are completed. We are seeking funding through Trinity Wall Street in New York, and they have given us the the green light to the second phase and round of funding. We have received an initial piece to get some architectural pieces done. Now the next phase is the feasibility study, and then we'll be moving to zoning and other components related to pre-development needs for the project to begin. So really excited about that. It has been, as you know, Bill, under the way for quite a while. The pandemic disrupted us a little bit, but we've gotten back on task now and really looking forward with your help and others to really make that come to fruition.
I wish we had. I didn't think to have those renderings on the show today, but I'm sure they can get a chance to see them come by to church or whatever the case may be at New Life. But I do want to pay homage to a former member of your church, George Lawson, and Mr. Lawson was so passionate about the building of this facility, and we lost him. I guess now it's been a couple of years, Lord, of just this 1 year. And just want to give homage to him. He was such a great person and a great leader, and kind of an architect of getting your church to where it is today.
Yes.
Even like you when you came over to be. When he came over to be minister. That's an awesome task. I mean, we think about churches and we think about reverends or ministers, or we have, some of them have their hand full with just the church itself. And I've always talked about, even when I was in the political arena, that the church has to come be outside of their walls. I mean, not only are you doing those things, but I was with you a couple of weeks ago and you had a jazz on the lawn.
Yeah.
And I tell you, they was over there, they were liquor sliding, and the lady was singing, and it was just a wonderful way for communities to come together. How did that vision first start, Pastor?
Well, that vision started when a group of members of the congregation realized that they all had been impacted by breast cancer. And the former pastor's wife, Miss Brenda Oliver, she transitioned from cancer, and the committee formed not long after that. And every year they raise funds through a golf tournament. In past years, we've usually done a walk up and down Old National. We weren't able to do that this year. And then we always conclude with the jazz service and a worship service on Sunday. But it is a core group of people who have been victorious over breast cancer, and they've come together to raise funds. We've given away, Bill, over at least $30,000 a year to Sisters by Choice, and we've given $20,000 each year to St. Jude as well during these months because of the work that ministry and committee has done in our church. So we're just, extremely proud of them. Every year, it's a good time to come together. We party and we have a good time. It's more of a celebration of life to be able to look around and see all those folks who have overcome and survived breast cancer, and the families who are there as well. They are survivors of that disease as well.
Great. It was great. A lot of fun. A lot of people are having a great time for a good purpose. So we should continue. You've been in Old National now for a while. How do you see Old National? What can you do or your church do to increase, the image or the projection of Old National as a community to live, work, and play?
Well, the first thing we have to do is be strategic, Bill, about our partnerships. Old National has huge potential. Sometimes I think it's untapped potential, or just maybe just has fallen off the radar for some. But its close proximity to the airport, to the city of Atlanta, the opportunity for it to be a thriving business corridor, and residential space that can be very appealing to folks. Is what I envision and see. But the church, as I've always told my congregation, we have to be a part of developing the community we wish to see. We just can't pray for it. We just can't think it's going to fall out of the sky. We have to be active in community. That means partnering. The church and community partnering is so vital and important. It fosters a sense of togetherness and belonging within neighborhoods and towns. And today, more so than ever, because most of the statistics show, Bill, that people who come into areas like the Old National Corridor are usually commuting in to church. So it's important that the church does its best to maintain sort of that neighborhood feel, that we are a part of the neighborhood. We're not transient people who travel in for church and then go back out, but that we're vested, we have a vested interest, and we want to be a part of the development. And Old National Highway and that corridor has tremendous potential, and I see it in the next couple of years being something very, very, very strong. So these partnerships, they bridge gaps and they unite people. We want to partner with businesses. We want to partner with governmental agencies to really provide the citizens with what they need. And that is part of what, I don't know if you know the school we have there, which is the Legacy Academy. It started off as a daycare up the street. And no more than 3 weeks after I arrived at the church, a woman knocked on the door and she had a dream and a vision. And I had space. And I said, let's make it happen. And we started the Legacy Academy, and that school's been going on now since 2017. And it is a feeder school from her daycare down the street. But those kinds of partnerships unite and bring together community and create a more inclusive and supportive community. And that's what we envision our work being in that corridor and being able to really to do some powerful things.
And you're talking about what you're doing, and you're doing some fine things, and you're holding it together. My next question would be, though, if you're reaching out, you're going beyond the walls to do what you can for the community. What do you think? How many times does community come to the church, and say, hey, we want you to be a partner. Can you do this? Can you help us out? How often do you see that, or is this mostly a reach out from the religious community?
Well, Bill, it hasn't been as frequent as I probably would anticipate, and I think a part of that has been due to the fact that churches today have not often made themselves accessible in such a way that leadership, governmental leadership, as well as community organizations see them as partners and resources. We're not in the business of recreating the wheel. If there's someone out there who's doing it and doing it well, we just want to partner with you to make sure that it becomes even stronger. And I think sometimes the hesitancy to work with churches is that churches, it has to fit a particular thing they're doing, or they have to construct it. There are a plethora of reasons as to why that occurs, but I've seen recently, and it varies from administration to administration as well. It all depends on leadership, how leadership sees the church as a valuable instrument in the community. And I will say, because I've been through 2 administrations, and I always want to give credit where credit is due, I recognize that early on in your administration, your connection with churches and congregations and understanding how vital they are to the overall health and vitality of the community. And I think if more folks realize that, business entities as well as governmental leaders, they could see the church as a greater resource, especially the Black church. We are usually the largest landowner in our communities. We usually have the most space. We're engaged in more social services outreach than some of the agencies that we wish were in our communities. We're doing for our people what government has sometimes failed to do.
This brings it another question, an old adage that's always been there, and sometimes I find in my political career that some churches like to hide behind it, and that is separation of church and state. I'm like others have been trying to find it in the Constitution. I ain't found it yet. I guess I'll find it one day. but let's talk a little bit about that, because really earlier on, churches handicap themselves with this whole adage about separation of church and state. Talk to me about that for a minute.
Yeah, well, my particular view and my training on that, Bill, is that that was often a ploy to really quell the prophetic voice of the Black church. At one point the Black church was very strong and critical of government. We thank God for the C.T. Vivians and the Dr. Kings and Joseph Lowry's and all of those who dared stand in the face of injustice and many of the horrific atrocities that imposed upon Black folks. And there was never a question about whether or not the church should be engaging the state around what they believed was unjust. But as time has gone on, I believe that has been used to kind of dampen or quiet the prophetic voice of the Black church. We have to be engaged in what is happening in our communities. There cannot be a separation, especially when the state has a direct impact on the people we serve. We have to be involved in what takes place. And if we're true to the biblical teachings of Jesus Christ, the church in his day was the state. The governmental leadership came out of the synagogues and the temples. They instituted laws. They carried out edicts. They reprimanded and held court and handled the people. But Jesus challenged them as well. He challenged those governmental officials, those religious leaders, if you want to call them either way, to do right by the people. And I think that becomes important for the church to recognize. We have a responsibility to the community, and our work should engage both the priestly and the prophetic. We should be, priestly leaders in our congregation, but we should also be prophetic leaders in the public square. One of the great theologians said that every preacher should have the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other, and you should be tying the two of them together. Because if we're not meeting the practical needs and addressing what people are going through on a daily basis, then what good are we?
Mm-hmm. So I know the good thing is that's happening on Old National Highway, thanks to the work of the city council, is that you're getting the new police headquarters right down from your church. Has the church have any plans of what they can do to further what the good thing that's happening with the police and how they're going to do things in the future? Have you all thought about joining hands with them when they get there?
Well, we're definitely looking for opportunities to partner. I know that our elders are planning an appreciation piece for the police department, because we are grateful for the strides that they have made. We have seen the significant changes on the Old National Corridor under the leadership of Chief Meadows and the expansion of the South Fulton Police Department. Their presence has made a tremendous difference on that corridor. So we want to show our appreciation to them. And we will definitely, in months to come, find more critical ways to participate with the department to provide information, resources to the community. And I know that the partnerships that we have with some of the local police who frequent our area has just been very helpful and beneficial to our membership. So we're excited about that, and we definitely celebrate the strides that the department has made, and we believe they'll continue to make as well.
Yeah. And we have 3 different council people over there who hopefully will work together and join hands with you and others and really do an outstanding job in making which I feel the police department is one of the most outstanding departments I know in the region, at least. And Chief Meadows, who does a great job in doing it. Let's talk a little bit about you. I know that we build parks and recs and we do all these things, and I think the church plays a very big part in the development of the youth in this community. What are you all doing about serving that issue?
Well, youth programs and education are vital important to us. So, one of the first things, like I mentioned, was the school. So we have first and second grade where we're providing children with a powerful, robust curriculum that speaks to the demographic of students we serve, which we believe is important, Bill, especially in this day and age where we have political leaders who are trying to rewrite history and give our children a different kind of view of what has transpired in this country. So our school is designed to provide our children with the needed information and education that they need as a strong foundation for becoming the best that they can be. We also are beginning to run some youth programming. In the past, we have run summer camps. One of our largest summer camps that we did one year, and I think you were witness to that, was through the DA's office. And that was a very powerful program that we did. We've had to revamp that. We've gone to a STEM program, and we've received a donation of over 50 laptop computers that we'll be providing young people during the summer as they engage in STEM and youth activities. We've also run a football camp up at McNair Middle School. One of our members, at the time, he was playing for the New York Giants, but now he's playing for the Falcons. And he has run that program for us, Brother Carter. And we're hopeful that he will do that again in the near future. We also have started up a very powerful music program, Bill, that we launched about 3 weeks ago. We started out with just 3 applications, and now we're at well over 40 young people who are participating in this music camp. And we'll culminate with a concert in December. But this music program is designed to, number one, teach them the ins and outs of music, but also allow them to express their giftedness through musical instruments that they currently play. So we're running a lot of these youth programs. Our goal is to eventually get into some after-school activities and educational support services. Our Presbyterian House ministry does do tutoring, provide tutoring for middle to high school students as well. And those are some of the, very necessary and needed pieces that we need in order to help our children gain an advantage in the educational sphere.
I think those things are very important. When you live in a country that has the highest incarceration rate in the world.
Yes.
And most of those who are probably the incarceration rate is higher among African Americans than any other race. I think that one of the things that we have to do, how are you seeing, recidivism is important. And I think that all the things you say, how can we overcome the church to help to overcome the effects of recidivism and people going back to jail, or is there something that, because people believe in the church, basically they believe in the church. I don't know if they will come to the church and say, I don't want, Pastor, I don't really want to go back to jail, can you help me, or something like that. But how do we handle, when we talk about recidivism, how do we handle that from the church's position?
Well, we have to have resources, Bill, and it's funny you said that, because I've had numerous individuals come to the church who have been recently incarcerated, and that has been their thing. They don't want to go back, but they're having a hard time finding a job. They're having a hard time finding folks who will look past their records, hard time trying to get into job training programs. And, it's a vision of ours in the future to be able to provide some kind of resources that will allow these individuals to get back on their feet. One of the things that we did do for a couple of men who had left prison, who were dreaming of catering, we opened up our kitchen space to them to provide them with an opportunity to get their safe serve license and to begin to launch their businesses. Unfortunately, a few of them were not successful in that endeavor, but that's an example of how the church can be more helpful to them. Now, if we did something a little bit more focused and intentional, like providing HVAC training within our spaces, providing trucking license and GED programs, all of those things can be helpful and beneficial to those who are coming out of systems of incarceration and need the opportunity to rebound in life. So often the frustration for me as a pastor is that when they do show up, I don't have those particular things in place. And I think that's where the beauty of partnerships with the city and other local agencies can become powerful if we had those places, we had those things in place in our churches. Because most often, Bill, the first place, people don't think about it, but the first place people come is to the church. And the first place they call is the church. I can pick up my phone every morning and go through at least 10 to 20 voicemails of people who are calling because they need something and they want to know, where can they get it from? Can you, Pastor, help direct me in this particular way? And so often, because of the disconnect between the church and governmental agencies, we don't always know the resources. And it would be helpful if some of those things were centered in our buildings. If we had, the not just something on paper to give somebody, but an actual social worker or somebody who could service the community. It would be a beautiful thing if that could take place.
Yeah, you talked about the between the government and the church about being unified in terms of what's offered. But how are the churches from church to church? If I go to New Life and talk to you, and would you know of another church or another denomination in the area or another pastor that you can say, well, we don't have it here at New Life, but if you go over to Pastor Jones, for say, they have an extraordinary program there and would love to have you. Can we build something like that as we move into the future? Or is it already existing? I don't know.
Currently it doesn't. I don't think that there is a very strong network in terms of churches knowing what other churches' strengths are and how we can direct folks, to particular ministries to meet their needs. Me as a leader, I would never be opposed to that, because if I don't have it, I definitely put you in a direction where you can go. And I know that I can't be everything to everybody. Neither do I want to be. But we want to do what we do and do it well. But if there's someone else who has it, it would be helpful. Even if there was an entity in the city that organized churches around that piece, some cities have religious affairs directors who kind of work on those pieces and bring churches together and build partnerships and help the community to understand the resources that each place has. What I will say that probably most of community members are aware of are the feeding programs. They're aware of what church does a feeding on a particular day, and they know which churches to go to, and we know which churches are doing that and can direct them, because we only feed on certain days, and if we get someone who comes to us, we can always say, well, go up the street, to World Changers or somewhere else where you could receive what you need. So that could be strengthened much more so that the church could understand the resources that are available at churches.
Let's drop back to families themselves, Pastor, which is actually the community, and that community, how it develops in their relationship with their church. Families are in trouble a lot of times. And that, because what people are not getting from home translates into crime and other things in the community that you all as community leaders are trying to fight against. What do you see as some strong programs? We're talking about the family that church can provide for the family, because I don't know, today's church, I don't know if everybody in the family is going. Some people are going, some are not. And I think that's an issue. But what do you think some of the things we could do from a religious perspective to try to place our hands on some of the family issues that turn out bad, and probably some of the reason why a lot of our kids and others are going to prison and jail?
Yeah, well, family systems are very challenging piece, and this is where strategic partnerships with mental health organizations and counseling services become vital and important. Many churches could definitely benefit from offering counseling and mental health services from trained professionals and volunteers. And I'm not just talking about pastors who give advice and so forth and so on. I'm talking about trained professionals who recognize symptoms and signs that are necessary to help people work through the psychological issues, the trauma that they've experienced, and to really help families develop coping mechanisms and get to a place of healing and wholeness. That is one of the major pieces that is often missing in the Black community in our church spaces, are those resources for counseling services. We have people dealing with tremendous grief, Bill, people who have in certain areas, urban areas, who have lost people to violence, who have lived under violence. All of those things have a psychological impact on families and family systems. Unemployment, fathers and mothers navigating the psychological impacts of being unemployed and the pressures of having to care for family and not having the resources to do it. All of that becomes powerful, necessary work in counseling spaces. And if our congregations had better partnerships to address the mental health needs of the community and reduce the stigma around mental health issues, I think our families would be in a better place. Now, the church can do a great job from the spiritual and the moral and ethical guidance that comes along with family, and creating support systems through our men's ministries and women's ministries. But there needs to be in our church spaces somebody who is trained and dedicated. We've in the past, we've had a mental health counselor on staff. It's only been in the last 2 years that we have not been able to do that, because we haven't been able to find someone who would be willing to do some of that work pro bono. But the time that we did have it, family mothers and fathers were just, celebrating the fact that they had somebody that they could take the family to and deal with some of the issues that they were faced with and challenged with. And we've also used those resources to help families who are dealing with caring for loved ones who are ill. In our aging congregation, for example, Bill, you talk about families. We realized how many families were struggling with being the primary caregivers for aging parents who were dealing with dementia and other pieces. So we provided, through a partnership with Emory, just an understanding of the resources available for people who are struggling with those matters. And we've done grief circles and others that have helped families to process, the grief that they're experiencing. But I would definitely say, Bill, that the ways in which we could help the African-American family in our communities in particular, outside of what we do from a church standpoint, is to really partner with mental health and counseling services to strengthen our families.
And of course, the job of Fulton County, which we pay taxes to, is to be involved with mental health. And I don't know if the churches have made an effort to call Fulton County Health. I think a great idea would be you talk having someone in the area, and a person like you would say, "Hey, I got an office space here. You could have. If you want to come in and do it." And has anyone contacted the Fulton County Health Department in terms of the need for some mental assistance in the community?
To my knowledge, no. And I think that's another piece, Bill. That's new information. And I'm wondering how many other pastors know that. I mean, I'm one who would say we have ample space for somebody to set up office and a couch and do some work.
Don't say couch now. People make that was old people used to do. But I think that's something that I'll look into and see. Well, Mr. Lawrence got a question for you, so it's come in for you. So I'm gonna ask the question. Come on, Lawrence.
I have three questions and a statement. The first question: does New Life offer any type of leadership programs for associate ministers, ministry leaders, and other staff?
We do. We have a associate ministers program through our session for those who are interested in becoming, in our denomination, what we call ordained elders. Those who would be looking for that opportunity can go through our training process for that. That is something that is available.
This second question sort of touches on that as well. Christian education is the key. What does New Life offer?
Well, we offer what we call spiritual formation. So it encompasses Christian education, but it also, we believe that the spiritual formation of folks is vital and important. So we offer, biblically based teaching classes, the traditional things that most often churches have, which are our Sunday morning Bible learning sessions that are currently held on Zoom. We have two classes, two very strong classes that take place every Sunday. We also have Wednesday Bible study. We do those in sessions. They don't happen every Wednesday night, but we do consecutive 6-week sessions, and we pause and we come back. That gives people an opportunity to kind of step away, but also the 6 weeks allows people to be committed to that time frame, and they know that this is the time we'll engage, and then they'll step away. We also have for our young adults, they meet on Sunday afternoons, and our Thrive ministry, and they engage around topics that are germane to their age group, that are very, very powerful and rich. That's a good space. So we do have opportunities for all those pieces that are listed on our website in various age categories at www.newlifepresatl.com for more information.
Can you repeat that for me?
www.newlifepresatl.com.
And the other statement, the last statement is, they love the mental health concern instead of incarcerating. So they really appreciate you focusing on that.
Okay. I'm a little younger than you, so I'm gonna go back.
In church years, you might be.
That was even worse, that pastor. But when I was going to church, I was raised AME, and everything you want to know in the community, it was told to you from the pulpit. We didn't have flyers, church flyers, and we didn't have computers, and we didn't have cell phones. But we did have pastors with heart and with love enough to make sure that you got the information that you need to take you where you want to go. You don't see much of that anymore. Pastors do what they do. They come in, they preach the word, and they go home and you wait for them to call you. But I think that we want to, how can we incorporate things that they need to know? Because in politics, everybody's in a learning process. Now, I'm just astonished about how many people don't know a lot of things as it pertains to politics. So how can the church help and assist through their services on Sunday, whatever the case may be, to be more educational about, what is for example, people are calling out because they don't know where to go vote. This is early voting. They thought they could go to their regular precinct and they get there, they can't do it. So how do we get that message over through our churches?
Well, in the past, you've done this, Bill, and also some of the council persons, and it's been helpful and beneficial for us. We have a weekly newsletter and an e-blast that goes out every Friday morning to all of our members and visitors. I think that list goes well over 1,000 plus people. But what we do is, it's just not church news, it's community-wide news as well. So we will put in that newsletter information regarding the city. We'll put in there links to the council person's newsletters. We'll also put links in there for important events that are happening, because it's for us, it's important that the church and the community is informed about what's going on. And since we are a polling precinct, we also make sure that people are very aware of the times and when things are happening, so that they know where they need to be and where they need to go. So if the information was shared, again, like I said earlier, in certain government, offices, that's a role of somebody to make sure that information gets out to the churches, because whether we want to believe it or not, that is still a very critical source of information sharing. It comes across the pulpit and it can reach more people than you could ever expect. If it comes from the pastor's email or something, it could reach more people than you could ever expect. But so often that information is not shared and given to churches, and churches don't often always seek it out. We also have to do a better job of coming and saying, what is it that we need to let the community know? Please share it with us.
That's a very interesting comment. The fact that maybe we're not, as government, we're not letting you know or letting you become part of the process. If that is the case, we're missing a very important piece in terms of communication with our constituents and community. If we don't do things like that, that's why I get back to saying when I was younger that we had everything in the church. I mean, pastor tell us everything. Who to vote for,
Mm-hmm.
whole deal. And then we went through this process of separating the church and state. Then we get to something else. But I think the government really needs to have, if they're not doing that, they need to have a better process of informing you. Dolores has another question for you.
The question: will you give a word on the personal responsibility of spiritual development and one not leaving the church to do it all?
Well, we all have to work out our own soul salvation. The church can only do but so much. The church can plant a seed, as the Bible reminds us. One plants a seed, another water, God gives the increase. And the watering for me comes in the personal work that we all must do. Seeds are planted in church, but you cannot believe that you're going to develop everything you need by coming to church on a Sunday or a Wednesday. It takes some personal responsibility. If you went to the gym 2 days a week, that wouldn't be enough to develop. You've got to do something in the meantime. For those of us who have gone through any kind of physical therapy, you always go home with some homework to continue to develop the muscles. And it's the same thing with the spirit. You have to engage in contemplative practices on your own. You've got to pray, you've got to meditate, you've got to study God's word. You have to do those things on your own. And in doing that, you become stronger spiritually. Sunday morning is good, but that's only a foretaste of what can come when you engage in your own personal life and put into practice those things which you have learned in the church sanctuary. So yeah, that's vital and important. I think Sunday morning Christians struggle more because of the fact that they don't put in the work necessary to develop their spiritual health during the week.
Okay, and then this is a statement. Then I have another question. The most prolific messages I've heard were preached by Presbyterian pastors. And the last question is, can you repeat the website again and give the church address?
www.newlifepresatl.com.
And the church address?
And the church address is 6600 Old National Highway, City of South Fulton, 30349.
Anything else, Laura?
That's it for right now.
Before I sign up, I just, you said something about, when we were talking about mental health, that I just kind of got me, and I want you to explain a little bit more. When you talk about looking at people and symptoms and signs, all right, having people trained, what do you mean by that? I mean, are you looking in the congregation and say, oh, that woman there, she's on drugs? But she got the symptoms of drugs. What do you, when you say symptoms and signs and being able to be learned enough to know them when they're there?
Yeah, there are certain things when you're trained to see, Bill, people who are dealing with depression, who are sort of reclusive or maybe in some ways antisocial, or may just disappear from church life. Those are sometimes the signs that people are struggling internally and sometimes in isolation, and may need assistance. Most often, the folks who I like to say, as my grandma would say, act out in church, are usually people who are grappling and dealing with some internal traumas that they have not necessarily dealt with as well, and that becomes a sign. There are impacts of transgenerational trauma. There's trauma that's handed down, that's learned and embodied, that you as a trained professional can begin to see and witness, and provide resources from a non-judgmental perspective, just understanding that people are sometimes the victims of the cultures and societies in which they grew up in the communities, in the households, and they bring all that to church. And the church should never shy away from being able to provide them with the resources they need. I've seen various cases throughout my time pastoring, now over 25 plus years, of various mental health conditions that show up in the church, whether it's young people struggling with bipolar issues, or issues of being bipolar, or the highs and lows of manic depression that they experience. And sometimes the coping mechanisms that young people have developed have lended themselves to drugs. That's the way they self-medicate, because they don't have the necessary resources to help them with the issues that they're grappling. But a trained healthcare professional would be able to identify those in youth group circles, and you don't often see it from the pulpit, but you see it in various spaces where people may need somebody to talk to, who are wrestling with grief. I had a woman who just recently, not too long ago, joined our church, but her son was killed and was murdered tragically in Memphis, Tennessee, and she moved here, just started fresh and anew, but she'd never done any work around that loss, having to hold her son. She took the last breath, and to think that you can just pray that away, you're doing yourself a disservice, because God has equipped people with the necessary tools and gifts and skills to help you navigate those things. And that's some of what I'm talking about in terms of mental health. So if mama doesn't deal with that trauma, Bill, that has an impact on the entire family, and the rest of the siblings who are alive and living in that home. It creates turmoil with the spouse. So all of those pieces become an issue that impact family.
Well, Reverend, let me personally thank you for being on the show today. Like I said, when I thought about this, I couldn't think of anybody better, than you, because of what you do. Like the knowledge is one thing, but taking the knowledge and make it become reality and helping someone is totally different. And I know that that's what you do each and every day. And I've always loved working with you, continue to work with you as you do better things for people, or especially in the Old National area. So we really appreciate you being here. Okay. Once again, this has been outstanding. Great conversation with the Reverend Hodari Williams. And let me close by saying this. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn away from your wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and will heal their land. And that's a scripture that's always followed me through my career as a politics and life. And I think it makes life so simple. And there's nothing about that scripture that you have to think about. It's very to the point. And so we got leaders like you that are helping us to get to that point. And because at the end of the day, we want our land healed. And there's a roadmap to doing that. So thank you very much. We appreciate you. Now, as always, you know that the topic that we talk about on the show are from me and my guests, and not from WCEG, because they know I'm crazy. So they don't want to do that. So we really appreciate everybody. And remember, as I say every time we leave, and all you're getting, get an understanding. Thank you all so much.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone.